If you are curious, I'm biracial. My dad is from India, and my mom is a tiny white lady from Wisconsin, which apparently results in a surprisingly tall Mexican man. It's confusing for me too, believe me. Genetics are strange. But nobody ever knows. No one knows unless I tell them, and I completely understand, honestly. I got tan skin. My last name is Mamawala, which is clearly something. But people have questions, and I don't mind. Right? If I don't do that joke up top, sometimes people come up to me after a show. They're like, "Oh, that's an interesting last name. What's the origin?" But occasionally, people walk up to my face, and they're like, "What are you?" Afraid. And I remember a couple years ago, I had this meeting with a casting director, and during the meeting, in a somewhat condescending tone, she looks at me. She goes, "You know, it's very important in this industry that you understand how people perceive you. Like, how do you think people perceive you?" I was like, "I don't know. I've been told I'm kind of in that ambiguous category." She's like, "Go to me in terms of your ethnicity or sexuality?" Well, I guess both. Now, what the hell? You guys seem like more of a drinking crowd than a weed crowd. And to be clear, I mean that as a compliment, because you're fun. I used to get annoyed by drunk crowds. I'm back in on drunk crowds. Because I know you guys are a little ahead of us in New York, but weed just became legal in New York City, and now I'm doing a lot of shows for high crowds. Terrible crowds, I'll be honest with you. Because drunk crowds, they might heckle, but they're fun, right? They're boisterous, they're having a good time, they're into it. A high crowd is like, we will laugh tomorrow. We have a lot to unpack. I'm going to go home and sit with what you've said, and I will report back once I can remember what my fingers are. I'm not a weed guy. I want to be a weed guy. I've tried many times. It's always a disaster. The best way I can describe it to you, weed affects me the way Republicans think it affects everyone. I panic. I hide in corners of my home. I'm incapacitated. It's a terrible time. Once a year, I have the same terrible experience, and then I forget about it, and I do it again the next year. And this just happened to me recently. I went to a legal dispensary. I bought gummies. They were 5 milligrams. I was told that was mild. Turns out, not mild if you are a pussy. And I had one of them, just one. I didn't overdo it. I don't remember a lot of that night, but the next morning, I did wake up to an email from myself. The email was titled, "A Difficult Truth." I opened it up and it had one sentence that said, "If you're reading this right now, you already know." What a fun, whimsical time I had. Before I get out of here, I'll tell you a quick story about, I spent 4 months quarantining with my parents. I got stuck with them during COVID, and it was very nice. They're good people. But as I mentioned before, they are too supportive of my dreams. And that became an issue because I started doing some of those online comedy shows. And they wanted to watch all of them. It was very sweet. Every time I did a Zoom show, they were like, "That's so cool that you're still pursuing your dreams. We would love to watch from downstairs." So the first couple weeks I'm home, I agreed to do a show on Instagram Live before later learning that Instagram Live is the single worst place in the world to do stand-up comedy because you're doing it for no one. You're performing for your own face in your phone. And the only other thing you see is a small number in the corner of the screen signifying who's supposedly watching you, but you don't know who's there. So I agreed to do this show. Unbeknownst to me, my loving parents tune in from downstairs in the same house. And I don't know that they're watching. And the whole premise of the show is that we're all going to try our new quarantine material. And I tell this joke about how I feel the worst for teenage boys who are quarantining with their parents. Because I know when I was a teenage boy, the only thing that got me through the day half the time was knowing that my parents would inevitably leave the house at some point, and I would have some time alone. And now I feel ridiculous as this man in his 30s forced to live with his parents again in the middle of a global pandemic, just praying that they go for a walk once a week. So I have no idea that they've heard this, and it only becomes clear to me a couple days later when I'm sitting in my room, and I hear my mom very dramatically yell up the stairs, "We just wanted to let you know that we are going out for a walk now. We will be gone for between 20 and 30 minutes. You might have longer, but you should have at least 20 minutes. just sitting there like, oh my God, 20 minutes. My parents really do believe in me way too much. Only needed 5. You guys were a lot of fun. Thank you.